Well, in 1988, a group of mission leaders began to look at our planet and say, why is the gospel not moving into some places on our planet? And the term, the 1040 window, came out between, and looking at the poverty, looking at the place where missions was not, they began to try to think, how are we going to get into these countries that are closed, into people groups that have rejected the gospel, and just into difficult geographic places to get to. And out of that process, they began to think in terms of assigning missionaries the responsibilities for a people group or city or nation, and give them the responsibility of developing the strategy for that. At that time, I was serving in Malaysia, had been arrested there, had been basically expelled from the country. Well, they really expelled my wife and children, hoping I would follow, but I did not. And then finally they shut me down. And so I began to think, Lord, what do you want me to do next? And this group of men called me and said, we've been profiling existing church planters, and you fit the profile we want to see for this new kind of work into restricted access and limited access countries. And in my own mind, I was thinking, okay, this is going to be China, because I already spoke Chinese, and I could just move from Malaysia and straight in and work in southern China, where they also speak Cantonese. And they said, no, we have many people who want to go to China. It says the most difficult place on the planet is a place in South Asia with a very large people group that has rejected Christianity for over 200 years. And we want you and your wife to take on the responsibility for that people group. And out of this process, over the next 3 to 4 years, we began to learn a lot of things. And other missionaries were doing the same thing in other places. And we started seeing churches start in places where there had never been churches. But it was an unusual church start. It wasn't like our traditional Western church starts, where we would spend a great deal of money and see one thing start and nurture it for 2, 3, 4 years, and then go start one more church and nurture it for 2 or 3, 4 years. We saw churches that would start, and then they would start multiple churches. Okay. And all of a sudden you'd go from 0 churches to 200 to 300 churches in a year or two. And we, as a group, came together, all of us that were doing this kind of work, came together in a round table discussion, and we did 2 things. We wanted to say, what are the common elements we're seeing in these works? And Dr. David Garrison published that material in his first CPM book. And then we had to come up with, what do we call it? And we kicked around a lot of different names and finally said, why don't we just call it church planting movements? Because the reality is, we're not really causing things to happen. We get engaged at the front end, we're catalytic in nature, we're training things, but then it takes off without us.